got Adam sitting in chatting with us. So in the video that you sent me, this is going to take us back to where you were to fill everything in. You said you were talking about how Gutfeld had brought up the understanding that it's not about us fighting each other, that it's about understanding government against us, and that's what we do on Sonnie's Corner on a regular basis. Like, I've been consistently doing that for 4 years, and since I'm going on Gutfeld Tuesday, this is shout out for all the audience to understand I'll be on Gutfeld Tuesday night. Go ahead and make sure you tune in if you had an opportunity. When Gutfeld says that, I genuinely believe it coming from Gutfeld because of the relationship that we've built over the years. But from conservatism and the Republican Party at large, and I keep sticking on especially white conservatives and white Republicans because that's the majority of my audience. And I think if I'm going to say these things, the best time to say it is to their face and not behind their backs. So, but the rest of them, I could not give that benefit of the doubt because I've been at this place too many times where, again, it's not government that's dividing us, right? We haven't even got to the issue of systemic racism. It's not government that's dividing us. It's Republican white conservative reaction that is really causing a lot of the problems.
So, Sonnie, do you think that reaction is organic, or do you think that the media assigns us our opinions? Because when Greg talks about it, it's not just the government, it's the media narrative. So I feel like conservative Republicans are just like everybody else.
But that's like, and if you're never offered an alternative option of looking at it, then you can be given that benefit of the doubt. Me having offered that alternative for 10 years and in big spaces, like in the White House, at the Apollo, like in all of these like really big, genuine spaces, like, no, they do not want to have this conversation. They do not want to engage in new knowledge at all. So you can only blame the media so many times as when an alternative has been offered, right? So you take your kid and your kid keeps doing something bad and you're like, look, how about I go and do XYZ so you can have something to do in the afternoon so you don't keep getting into this mess. Your kid says no and keeps getting into mess. You don't reward your kid for that. You provided them with an option that they chose not to take. At some point, it is the action of the kid. And it is the same thing with conservatives. If you are consistently being offered a better conversation, a better dialogue, a better chance at solving these issues, but you choose to stay where you are, no matter how many times that offer is made, at some point it becomes your personal responsibility. And as the personal responsibility, people should understand that.
Yeah, let me add the reframe, just the stuff that I wanted to fill out before we went to break. If anybody's joining us, I was intentionally provoking race conversation. I had no idea that the cancellation would be global. I thought it'd be a little kerfluffle, and then I would attract people's energy. And I would reframe from here's the most ridiculous thing. When we're talking about black versus white, everybody in that conversation knows there's no such thing as black and there's no such thing as white if you're talking about an opinion. It's just a whole bunch of opinions that people lump together and branded as black and white. So the reframe is that the people in charge want us to be talking about race because that gets you all the clicks, it gets you the money, it keeps the people in power because then the poor whites and poor blacks don't get together and they would have tremendous power together if they ever organized. So my reframe is if we could reframe away from this artificial group of blacks, which doesn't make sense, with this artificial group of whites that doesn't make sense. Instead say, let's not forget history. Let's not forget systemic racism. Any conservative who says that's not real, I can't take seriously. I mean, you just don't belong in the conversation if you can't say that. I mean, at least in terms of the school differential, the bad schools for black Americans. There's no way you can deny the most obvious parts of it. So I always think conservatives are just bankrupt when they try to avoid it. But my reframe is, we should be working on the big stuff, but that's going to take a long time and it might not help you personally. If you personally want to be immune from systemic racism, then you do the thing that every successful person has done, black or white or anything else. They all follow somewhat of a similar path in terms of the technique. And the technique is not taught in schools. So I guess some people figured it out on their own. Maybe some people had good mentors. But my preference is to make those available to everybody, which I've done in my books and I do continuously on my live streams. And I'll give you some example of success strategies that if your listeners are scratching their head and saying, well, what's that about? That's my point. If you're not familiar with these techniques, you don't know the basic techniques of success. For example, how to build a talent stack that isn't just I'm a doctor, or how to do, it's a collection of skills that work together to make you special. What's the difference between a system and a goal? Like a system would allow you to achieve many different goals, and a goal just sort of narrows in on one, and maybe that wasn't even the best thing to do. So if you don't know that distinction of why the system is so much more powerful than a goal, it would be hard to succeed. If you didn't know how important it was to network and the fact that we are the average of the 5 people we hang around with, so you can actually manage who you are by who you spend time with. It's a basic success strategy. How to take a micro step when you don't know how to do something big. You want to start a company, but you don't know anything. So how do you take the smallest step? Talk to somebody, look something up, and then you build from there. Basic how to succeed stuff. It's in the book Atomic Habits, talks about that. How to be future-focused instead of past-focused. In my opinion, that's the biggest problem with the training of the ESG and the DEI and the CRT. Even though those things are maybe factually accurate, I don't want to get into the argument about the details, but let's just say that the general idea that white people were the cause of slavery and white people, generally speaking, are let's say perpetuators of systemic racism, either intentionally or not. And that's a backwards-looking strategy. Now, you can't forget history, and you don't want to cover it up. You want it to be fully presented. But if you're talking about how do you succeed, looking backwards never worked for anybody. There's nobody ever.
Okay, see, all right, let me see this is my issue. Okay, right? So I would consider myself, right, to be successful, right? I am happily married, got my kid good, going to college. I'm in a career that I love. I'm able to move the way I want to move, do what I do. In all the course, I would consider myself successful, right? So, and I think a lot of Black people would do the same, right? Our issue isn't that. And this kind of goes back to, again, this idea of judging on the content of your character, like there is something wrong with our character. Like that is not the problem. We can do the self-help. We got Yana Van Zant. We got the people in there that will help us in those areas that we need to. Not discounting you at all, but just saying we got all those things. Our problem is, specifically after we get to this point, is that we want to spread this ideology into our communities. But we understand we can't spread the idea. It's not about teaching us the ideology. We got that. It is about having that implementation of that ideology into our communities. And it's not just a matter of doing it through the schools, though that is an area where focus would definitely be given. But when you're looking at economic policy, like you don't have to teach Black people how to start businesses. We know how to start businesses, and we can very much teach each other how to start businesses. The problem is the regulation, the taxation, and the legislation that are in our communities and how that stalls and breaks and hinders business. So it's not a conversation about the character or like that kind of aspect of it. It is about understanding we want to get these wonderful lessons. We're not disagreeing with the lessons. We're not disagreeing with the skill set. Like, we're not disagreeing with that. But we want that implemented into our communities via government. So we're getting effective government via legislation. So we're not getting massive amounts of legislation that allows government to bastardize it at every turn. Like, we're not put in a taxation situation where we are nearly bankrupt because we choose to own property or own X, Y, or Z. So it is not a matter or a question about the single how do you get to success. It's about how do we multiply the success that we have learned in a progressively controlled and dominated place that wants government to be the answer for everything. See, like, it's a completely different conversation.
The government has to be at least not stopping you from succeeding. But let me add a little white perspective on this, white man perspective. I was talking about this morning. When I talk to anybody, doesn't matter who it is, and they signal that they know the basics of success, they understand reciprocity, they're optimistic, they're looking forward, they built a skill stack, they talk in terms of systems and not goals, their race disappears. And I don't think you could fully understand the degree to that's true. If you walk in with that,
I clearly gave you the example of Jay-Z where all those things apply. His race does not disappear. His past does not disappear. This is the standard that they have for black people coming from conservatives, white conservatives, and white Republicans.
Sonnie, let's drill down on that.
It does not disappear.
If Jay-Z asks for a meeting, do you think people don't take him seriously? I think the race never disappears.
Look, this is what I have been told by 10 years from white conservatives and Republicans. I have been told for 10 years from white conservatives and Republicans. You would be so beneficial to conservatives. You would be so beneficial to Republicans if you would just stop with the black stuff. So if you would just stop with the black culture, when I tell them that Jay-Z is more of a reason for me being a conservative than Ronald Reagan is, 150%, that's when my intelligence gets questioned. Nobody questions my intelligence on the actual principles, the actual subject matter, the actual historical context. Nobody comes for me on those issues. It is specifically when I am talking about black men and seeing them clearly, or understanding black men's attachment to capitalism, or like any kind of issue like that, that's when I become negative. So what I am telling you is the rules that you are setting do not apply to black people from white conservatives and white Republicans. What works for them is if you say, I am not black, I am American. If you say, get over black history. If you say, systemic racism isn't real, look at me, I succeeded, I'm proof. If you say those things, then they will accept you. But your record of success is not an accepting factor. Your ability to rationalize and explain capitalism or conservatism, that they do not work on a meritocracy. They work on how obedient you can be to the talking points and stereotypes.
Well, I think you're in a special case because you're a vocal leader, and you're let's say an important voice on the conservative side as well as Black America, and that's kind of a special case. I'm talking about somebody who just comes in for a job interview. If somebody comes in for a job interview, the conservative says, "Holy shit, you didn't mention race." They like that. You said a whole bunch of things that signal success. I'd love to work with you. That's pretty much the whole conversation. And I think to the extent,
and again, that's a personal one-on-one, and I'm all for it. Like I said, I'm not against that.
Right.
The number one principle I follow in conservatism is the idea of the individual, and that you must first and foremost secure yourself, secure your household, secure your family, first things first. So I am not arguing against that principle, and that's something completely that I would agree with, and that goes under the flag of conservatism with the idea of individualism first. But I'm on the second step. We've got that. And for a lot of Black people, this is the problem. We can't, either we don't get to the second step, or the second step gets misrepresented.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just want to get a clarification on this one point. When you say we got this, you're talking about the let's say the techniques of success, because I think that the newer stuff, especially the things I've introduced, are sufficiently wildly different from what you've seen in the past that I'd want to make sure that everything's up to date. So I would worry about.
And again,
if you,
those conversations, I'm not against having those conversations and having as many of them as we possibly can. But the racial conversation, that it comes next, because we're actually talking about understanding and identifying what is in the systemic system. And if you can't even get to that part, you're asking Black people again to build on infertile land. And I told this to Donald Trump when I went to the White House, is that you have a generation of Black people that want to build, want to reclaim, want to restake, but they're being asked to grow through concrete. And we're just like not asking for government to come in and solve, government to come in and fix any of that. But we're like, help us get into positions of power where we can break the damn concrete. The progressives want the concrete to stay. They don't want it moved. It helps them. It benefits them. It falls under their ideology. We want the concrete moved so we can build, we can develop, we can grow. That's what the offer is on the table. And conservatives and Republicans will not look at and accept that as being an offer for voluntary association. I'll let you wrap up with that.
Do they see, and I haven't heard it yet, so maybe you need to help me out here too. Are you saying that Black people have government regulations that are more burdensome, or because the situation, white people can break through those same burdens, but perhaps Black people can't for systemic?
No. Look, hey, it's some areas in Appalachia. You know what I'm saying? It's some areas all over this country where white people got work to do. I'm not sitting there like, oh, it's exclusively to Black people. But what my focus is Black people. Like I have went all over the country into poor white areas, and I have discussed conservative principles with them. It's not a problem. I have no problem going to their house. It is always the problem when they are asked to come to our house. When it's asked of us.
But help me out on understanding things, because this might be a perfect example of what you're talking about, because I obviously have like some blind spot here. So let me ask a specific question. Maybe you can help me. Are you saying that if you drop, let's say, a poor white person and a poor Black person into the same community, the government would be equally useless for both people and they would have the same burden, or not? Would there be something on top of that Black Americans are suffering?
There's plenty of white kids that came up in our areas that are just as bad as us. And we know it to be true. Like, this is the problem with these conversations. Like, we understand, but when it comes to specifically, like seriously, we understand. We're not looking at white people like they're walking gods. Black progressives may present that to be the case, but I can show you the majority of Black people do not get upset by tiki torches and khaki pants. Like, we are not that stereotype that they are painting us as. So, but specifically for Black communities, can what I say apply to white areas the same? Yes. What I say apply to Hispanic areas the same? Yes. But that is why the idea of conservatism equally applied is what I am pushing for, is that yes, it can work in all of these areas, but one of the deciding factors about that is that it has to be localized and it has to fit the locality and the people in that localized area. So if there is a majority of Black people in that area, it needs to be able to focus on those people, their needs, and how they can move forward and grow. And it goes the same if there's a district full of white people. Then you're going to be making the decisions whether, it's a district full of white farmers or it's a district full of white oil workers. Whatever the district is made up of is going to accommodate what the people in those districts need. Why can Black people not ask for that accommodation?
Yeah, I feel like we the two of us fell into the media narrative trap where we're talking about something that would be universally good for anybody. I think that's what you said, and I would agree with that completely. And even conservatives would, if you described it as, here's a universally good thing, but it also helps Black people. I think they'd say, yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, that's
No,
what.
I can promise you they would not. They would call you a racist. They will call you a black supremacist. They will call you a black nationalist. They will call you a black separatist. That's what they would do. And I know for a fact because that's what they've done to me. So it is not a matter of me thinking, oh, well, hypothetically, this might happen. No. I know what happens because the exact same points that I have made with you today on this show are the exact same points that I have been making to these people for 10 years, only to be called a racist, a black a nationalist, a black segregationist, a black separatist. So I am telling you from fact of personal knowledge that that's how they would react. But the sad part is we are out of time. I desperately have to let you go. Fire conversation. I hope you come back and we get a chance to do this again because I feel there's a lot of stuff I didn't get to chat about. But I really appreciate you giving us
I didn't realize how much we had in common. That was a pleasant surprise.
All right, well, looking forward to having you back. Thank you so much, the one and only Scott Adams. And again, you're going to have to check him out on his locals now because that's where all his content is going to be. But I have a feeling that he will bounce back because, systems, not goals. All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back to wrap things up.